right, here we are at the final devlog for SimSolver. This is number 14. Doesn't matter that much because, like I said, it's the final one. What I want to do for this one is a little different, more of like a post-mortem on everything I learned while making SimSolver. I'll talk briefly about what I've been doing in the past month and a half since I uploaded the last documentation. Oh, what happened there? And yeah, so I'm just gonna kind of be running around this area, just doing random stuff on the screen, and just kind of chatting, talking about what I've learned, what I've been doing, what I'm gonna be doing. So let's get into it. All right. So as for what I've been doing, really this last month and a half or I keep on saying month and a half. It's probably more like a month. Just been play testing, optimizing, trying to bug fix. I don't know how to bug fix though, so what I've been doing probably didn't help me that much, but the game runs a little bit better. Reworking things that just were kind of broken or didn't feel good to play through the play testing, and then doing a lot of stuff for release on Steam. So like a lot of graphical assets, getting trailers going, like getting approval from Steam. I got a lot of kickback because I didn't really know what Steam was asking for, and it took me about 3 tries to get approval. So that was fun. Learn my lessons there. But yeah, last month just been doing a lot of technical back-end stuff. I really like my final level. I had to basically remake the entire second half just because it wasn't working, and I couldn't figure out why. And that was annoying and kind of had to be in a panic, but we're good now. Everything's dandy. So yeah, that's just kind of what's been going on last month. I could go into a lot of details, which I already did in another devlog that I deleted because it was really bad. But yeah, just play testing, bug fixing, panicking, getting stuff ready for release. A lot of lessons learned. So that's the update, and now I'm going to get into the post-mortem part of this video. So in order to kind of talk about everything I learned, I thought it might be fun to talk about what led up to SimSolver, since I haven't really ever talked about that through my devlogs. I started my whole game development journey back in, let's call it May. Yeah, about May of 2023. I was working just like a normal job. I was one of the people who just kind of graduated high school, but right into working. Really was super unhappy, and I've always wanted to do game development. Like the game industry has always been something I wanted to get into. I just never really thought it was possible. And then just kind of a combination of being just not happy at my job, and it was actually a Double Fine documentary called A Psych Odyssey. I kind of watched that all the way through, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna hate myself if I don't at least try to pursue game development. So, quit my job, bought a $3,000 PC, and said, all right, gonna start learning how to make games. There's a bit more preparation that went into that, but yeah, that was kind of what just led up to this. And I went to college, or I'm going to college for game design, and I started classes that summer and really just jumped headfirst into Unreal Engine. I made 3, I call them games. They're not really games, more just learnings, little projects to help me get a feel of things, understand how Unreal Engine works, figure out what I want to be doing in the game industry. So I made those. You can see those on my portfolio. They're just kind of on there as early projects, but there's an open world or an open zone, whatever thing I made to learn landscaping tools. I made a 2D side scroller, and then a first person shooter. Just kind of learning basic skills. They were pretty low quality, but again, I was proud of them at the time. And it's weird to think that was only a year ago, because I feel like I've come a long way. But yeah, I did that, and then I kind of my school classes shifted to 3D modeling. So I said, all right, well, I'm gonna take a break from Unreal Engine. I've been working on that for I don't know what it was, 2.5, 3 months, something like that. And then I just jumped headfirst into Blender and walked away from Unreal Engine for a while. During that time, I didn't want to completely stop making game stuff. So I actually decided to go into Halo Infinite's Forge and do a multiplayer map. Start from complete scratch, do like a gray boxing phase, and then like fleshing it out, and just kind of documenting that whole process to teach myself how to go from like nothing to something, and like just like get those like good practices instilled in my patterns. So did that and was modeling in Blender for, let's call it, I don't know, again, probably 2.5, 3 months. And then I was like, okay, we're around end of December maybe in 2023, and I was like, time to get back in Unreal Engine, and I realized, oh god, everything's scary again. I completely forgot how to use this, so I decided to just like do like a basic like intro to Unreal Engine again, and I got familiarized with it again pretty fast. And in that video, there was kind of like it taught you how to do like this target system, keep track of targets. Kind of like you're seeing a version of that here, just kind of like the stupid like you shoot something, it goes to the scoreboard, you can have like a win state. I said, okay, well, screw it, I'm gonna run with that, and that's kind of how SimSolver began. And I very much expanded upon and added a ton to it since then. But yeah, SimSolver kind of started out as a little like stupid target minigame, and kind of still is. And it just spiraled from there. So yeah, that's how I got into making SimSolver. And now we're gonna talk about what I've learned. All right, so now to get on to like the lessons learned from SimSolver. The first one is don't start building your like level content until you've built all your mechanics, which seems obvious, but turns out it wasn't for me. So SimSolver has 8 levels total, and I was still building mechanics, like basic stuff of how I wanted the game to feel and like what I wanted included in it, up until the probably 4th level, maybe a little bit of the 5th level. But doing that was just ineffective time-wise because I essentially built the first 3 levels, and then in like the 4th level I kind of figured out this is what the game really is, and then I was like, shit, now I have 3 levels that really aren't very good and don't resemble what I want the game to be. So that required me to basically restart those levels, and I don't like, I wish I would have been smarter about how I handled that, but also it allowed me to go through the process of like redesigning, which I think was very valuable to me, because it kind of just gave me a lot more practice. Like the initial 3 levels really sucked, like, and it was very satisfying to kind of go back in and rework those both like mechanically and visually, and then like obviously like design. So that's the first lesson. Build out your mechanics before you start building your game, because it's just going to lead to issues. The next point I have is to make sure that your mechanics can support your gameplay ideas. I learned pretty early on with SimSolver that a lot of what I wanted to do probably can't do. Well, for one, I'm just not a programmer. Unreal Engine's great blueprints, and I can do a lot with them, but also I still struggle with that, and my main focus is just content building, level design, environmental art, and all the rest. So I just realized that I couldn't, like, I had so many ideas for like puzzles and what I wanted to happen in levels, like very early on in the like conceptual stages of SimSolver, that once I started building things, I just realized like I'm not there yet. I can't do that stuff. So that kind of led me rethinking what I wanted this game to be and what I wanted the player to be doing, which I think was good for me because it kind of made me realign my expectations and understand my skill set as of right now. So yeah, there's that. Just know what you can do before you actually start doing it, and make sure your expectations are realistic. Another thing I learned while making SimSolver was to settle on a visual direction, not at the beginning, but as early as possible. With this game, I always knew that it was going to be chaotic because I was just using a ton of art assets and a ton of different meshes to allow me to create whatever type of environments I wanted, and just kind of like practice different types of places and different types of styles. But I wanted to interconnect that all through the code space and all of that visual identity, and that visual identity was kind of just all from me, and I wasn't like, because a lot of these assets are like from Unreal Marketplace, but the code space stuff I really wanted to be like my thing. So it took a while for me to figure out what I wanted the code space to look like. You can go and see like very early versions of the tutorial level, and it just looks entirely different. Um, but eventually I did settle on it, but it didn't really settle on it until like the fourth level, which again that level was like a huge turning point for me in the game. And that's when I kind of figured out like, oh, this is how I want everything to look like. And then I went back and I remade certain areas of old levels, and I started like intertwining the code space into the other levels and other environments so I could have that visual identity. And if I would have figured that out a little bit sooner, it would have saved me about a month of work. But again, this is a learning process. And going forward, I'm going to be way more focused with my visual identity. Not going to do something like SimSolver again, where it's a hodgepodge of a bunch of different shit. That was not a bad idea, but not something I want to do again. So to kind of go along with the visual direction was be smart about the assets you're using when you're making your game. I used a lot of free assets from the Unreal Marketplace because, again, I wanted to have a diverse amount of environments so I could practice a lot of environmental art and just do like make different sorts of levels in different sorts of circumstances. But with that, I again was downloading a lot of like just free assets, and I was just kind of dragging them and dropping them and be like, all right, hope it works. Turns out doesn't work sometimes, and I had so many texture streaming issues, so I had to go in and learn that. Like video memory was an issue for me, just like collision not working right, or like it be having like weird lighting or like light maps, things like that, which did make me learn about that stuff. Like I had to learn how to like rework collisions and like fix light maps, create like the texture streaming pool stuff. I learned about all that, so it was good in some sense, but just like realize that you have to understand what the assets are using and what those assets are intended for, because like sometimes some of the like measures I wanted to use just like didn't work well in the environments I was creating. And I think going forward, I'm going to be way more focused about my art direction and the sort of assets I use for my game to give it a much more cohesive sense, because SimSolver is a kind of one-off just mess of environments and visuals. So yeah, just research what you're using in your game before you start using it. Don't just download something from the marketplace and throw it in there and call it a day, because not one other big mistake I made while making SimSolver was the writing. I got way ahead of myself, like writing a script. I probably wrote the script after I made the tutorial level like the first iteration of the tutorial level, which just I completely scrapped. I think it was important that I like before I even started building, I had like the broad idea of the code space and interconnecting it all through that, and the simulations and the viruses and like you're a computer program and you're being guided by this like kind of AI that runs everything. That was all there at the beginning, and that was good to do, but I tried to write dialogue for each level as I was going, and that just did not work, especially because I was constantly changing levels. I wasn't quite sure what the next where my game was going. I wasn't quite sure like what the next level would be. I was just kind of taking it one level at a time. So for my purposes, I think it would have been way smarter if I just created the whole game first and then wrote a story. I'm not a writer. Also, I've like done some journalism, and I love writing. I love storytelling, but that's not what this game is. The tone is basically shitty jokes, like kind of like a way worse Portal. And I think if you're an actual developer at an actual studio and you can actually write and you know what you're doing, the story can be the linchpin of everything. But for me, not the case. I needed just to chill on the writing because I rewrote the script like 4 or 5 times. And I did like I finally finished the script after I made the last level. And then I was like, all right, we're good to go. And kind of following the script writing was voice acting. I initially had like this terrible AI voice, which was just more for testing purposes. And then I decided I'm gonna record all the lines myself and do all the voice acting. And I literally recorded like 75% of the script with my voice. Horrible. I hated it. I learned how to use Audacity though, so that was good. Um, and then I eventually kind of started on this like text to speech that I heavily modified in Audacity, and I think it works relatively well. It's not perfect, but I mean I like it. It's way better than me voice acting it because it was just bad. So yeah, that's kind of the lessons I learned on writing. Probably an obvious thing that I should have learned way earlier was if it's broken, fix it before it gets worse. Like sort your shit out because I was ignoring a lot of issues and that kind of led to a lot of chaos in the past like month of me playtesting and trying to figure out like what the fuck was wrong with my game. Because I just kind of like push things to the side. It's like, it's gonna work out. It's gonna work out. It's gonna be fine. We're good. We're good. Don't worry about it. Turns out I need to worry about it. Yeah, it's just like fix problems as you go. Don't just like assume that it's gonna be fine. Because I had to rework so many. Again, I'm constantly saying the word like reworking everything, but I had to like rework whole areas of my game and just like change things and delete things and remove everything and swap things out until I figured out what the issue was for each level. Turns out it was just kind of minor shit. Kind of rounding back to the understand your assets that you're using. That was a big thing. I didn't understand what I was using. And like the technical restraints of it and like being like sloppy with like how I'm scaling things or modifying materials. So yeah, it was just like be like obviously when you're playtesting, that's when you're gonna find most of the issues. But if there's a glaring issue, sort it out. Another super useful point that I learned was just to keep things clean while you're building. Like, stay organized when you're building your levels. Files are great for just like organizing things. Don't just like throw things in a level. Be careful about like the amount of assets you're using. Like I have a little example here. Like I would try to build walls like using like huge walls, like just building like these like little modular pieces like this. And that just meant like my game was rendering a ton of things that didn't need to, like so much collision, which I removed in a lot of levels, like just useless collision. Just like, but it was just like streaming way too many textures that just didn't need to be there because I could have just like scaled this asset or created a new asset that just like wasn't composed of thousands of individual pieces. Like, because a lot of my levels literally have thousands and thousands of just like meshes that I didn't need to use because I decided that I wanted to build a wall in a stupid way or build a platform or build a whole area in a dumb way. And so just kind of learning to be smart about how you build. Don't take shortcuts, but just don't be a dumbass and realize that there's easier ways to do things and smarter ways to do things. And then kind of following that is clean up any assets that do. If there's something your player's not going to see, get rid of it. If there's like a place that they can't walk on, don't use collision there because it's just taking up pointless resources. And just like clean up all the little areas outside your map that you don't need. Like have it be the bare minimum for what the player's going to experience, because there's no point in just like being sloppy or having like overly scaled assets that are hiding things. Just be smart, be clean about how you do things, keep things squeaky, keep things clean. Basically. Next one is to make sure your level is actually playable before you move on to creating something else. And what I mean by that, I mean like playtesting is usually going to be at the end of the game, but just like make sure that everything works as intended and you're not like going through, even like in the early phases, everything's not just breaking. Make sure it's fun, that the player can understand what you're trying to convey to them. I learned that the hard way of just like, in my mind, I would create an area and be like, oh yeah, this makes sense. The player's going to know exactly where to go and exactly what to do. Turns out people aren't me and don't think like me and didn't fucking build the game. So like, because in my head, I would play test like, oh, this is obvious. Turns out, no, it's not obvious, and I'm being stupid, and I can't expect everyone to know exactly how the game works. So just like before you keep on building, go back, refine what you've already built, make sure everything's good to go, and just again make sure it's fun. make sure it's at least playable. Like there's certain segments in my game that's like things have like terrible glitches or like just like it's just like something wasn't working as intended, and I would just move on because like I figured it did work because I didn't do my due diligence. So yeah, just obvious stuff like that. Just be careful about what you're designing and make sure it's actually designed well. So the last lesson I want to talk about, and I mean, there's so many other things I learned by making this, but I want to talk about preparing for release. So essentially, prepare for release before you actually start preparing for release, because I mean, this is why this last month and a half has been so chaotic for me. Is I thought, okay, the game content wise is done. It wasn't because all the playtesting and reworking levels, but also I was like, just gonna upload it to the Steam store and we're gonna be good to go. But there were so many like graphical assets that I just did not have ready and I did not know I was gonna need. So that kind of led me to just like, all right, well, shit, guess I'm gonna teach myself some quick Photoshop skills and create all that, and just like looking at everything they needed and like or configuring builds, learning how to do that. I never even tried to package my game before I started building it, and I ran into like a bunch of packaging and cooking issues that was just like really stressful, and I thought my game was not ever going to be able to work. I mean, I figured it out eventually, but I was just like, be prepared. Don't set your release date until you know you can actually hit it and you're ready to go. I'm gonna hit our release date still. I might have already released the game by the time I uploaded this, but it's just been a real scramble because I didn't realize what I needed to do for the Steam store. So just making those art assets like for cover art and like getting like screenshots and trailers, that's a big thing and it's very time consuming. Um, just get all that ready and or at least know you have the resources to get that ready before you prepare to release the game. Also, the composer I worked with, Justin Bell, we're putting up the soundtrack that he made for or the one up like it's an amazing soundtrack he made for this game. We're putting that up on the Steam store, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I can just reuse a lot of the graphical assets that I made for my game. No, Steam said no. They said that needs to be unique for the soundtrack, so I had to go back in and create that. And like he had his own like album art and everything, but I still had to do like all like the vertical capsules and like header images. So just creating that, like learning like the data they need for both the soundtrack and the game. It was just I should have researched that before I actually tried to like get my game on Steam and committing to a release date because it's led to a lot of just me sitting on my computer until 3 in the morning trying to like do things. Um, but again, learning process, learn my lesson, and next time I'm gonna be ready. So yeah, that's just kind of my thing. Just prepare for release before you start preparing for release. So yes, I hope you enjoyed my little word vomits about SimSolver and just a few things I learned. I don't think I articulated a lot of what I learned well because I learned a lot more than I actually talked about here. And I'm taking so much. Like this game has been invaluable to me, and it was it's so satisfying to like just start building something and then see it through to the end. There was just so many challenges and like I know what the quality of this game is. It's not like the best thing ever. It's not even like good exactly, but I poured so much time into this game and so much time into creating the environments and just problem solving. And it's just been such a great experience learning how to make an actual game and all the issues you run into and kind of just like fulfilling all like the roles that are in game development. Like I had to be the writer, the level designer, the artist, the programmer, which is why the programming's so bad. Like the UI person and just like the marketer. Just like having to dabble in every single little role and making a game was just it was amazing just to figure out what I can do and to prove that I can actually do it. Again, I have such a long way to go with my game development journey and going forward, what I'm going to be doing next, like I'm going to be starting a new game that hopefully is a lot higher quality, and I already have like some ideas. I mean, I can tell you one thing: it's going to be way more focused and way more cohesive, and just not messy like SimSolver is. And then I'm also going to dive back into 3D modeling because I kind of, forgot the 3D model for the past like 8 months. So I'm going to have to teach myself a lot of that and even when I was doing it, I wasn't that great. So gonna work on that. Not sure when. I'll probably make devlogs for my next game. Don't know when that's gonna be, but yeah, I'll have a lot of like SimSolve related stuff on the channel, like walkthroughs, trailers, all of that. Been putting a lot of time to gathering footage for the game and just like preparing like my portfolio and stuff, adding this in there and giving like breakdowns on each level and just like my thought processes why creating. And yeah, gonna shut up now. If you're watching, thank you. Stay tuned for whatever I do next, whenever that's going to be. It will probably be just as chaotic as this was. So, bye.